What's up, everybody? It's your boy B. Scott with the Philadelphia Eagles. I just want to thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave a 5-star rating. Fly, Eagles, fly.
All right, thank you for tuning in to Eagles Brawl of the Brawl Network. Wherever you're listening, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other platform, we greatly appreciate it. I'm your co-host, Conor Miles. With me now is former Eagles offensive lineman Julian Vandervelde. He wants to give us a little insight on his NFL career, has experience with Doug Pederson, Andy Reid, and Philadelphia's famous most loved head coach of all time, Chip Kelly. We're going to get into it with him real quick. Julian, thanks for joining the show, my man.
My pleasure. I don't know if you're joking or not, because honestly, the way that Philadelphia Eagles fans show their love and their hate for the Eagles seems pretty analogous to me, man. Like, there's not a whole lot of difference.
Yeah, I can agree with that. There isn't. It's the brotherly love, man. That's what we're all about.
So much brotherly love. That love hurts sometimes. I'll tell you what. Woo, boy.
I bet, because like I said off the air to you, I just remember every day, because most of us Eagles fans have the Eagles notifications turned on Twitter, and they always announce the roster news every tweet, and your name is all over their ads. Julian Vandervelde signed, Julian Vandervelde cut, Julian Vandervelde signed, brought back. The crazy, like, I can only imagine what the brotherly love comments underneath those tweets were at that time.
I was just happy to be back from time to time. It was.
Me too. I want to be an NFL player.
Yeah, it's a tumultuous time in your life, and at the same time, like, you got to think there's a reason they keep bringing me back, right? That was always the underlying thought was, well, as long as I'm not gone for good, there's always a chance of sticking it out. And if I wasn't bringing something to the team, they wouldn't bring me back at all, right? The NFL's a business first. And if you're not bringing anything to that business, then they have no reason to keep you. So I was happy to be coming back, to Philadelphia so often, and I'd really come to love the city and the and the fan base there, and to know that I was able to bring something to the Eagles, even if it was just an NFL record number of transactions over the course of a couple seasons, it makes me feel good.
Well, not only that, you have good pedigree. Iowa. We all know how great offensive linemen are from Iowa. So let's just get right into it, though. So your rookie year, you come into the Eagles, 5th-round pick. They have a quarterback coach in Doug Pederson, who nobody thinks highly of. Nobody really knows who Doug Pederson is at this point in his Philadelphia tenure. What kind of coach was he back then? And are you surprised now that he's a Super Bowl winning head coach for the Philadelphia Eagles? Because like literally no one saw that coming.
I think he's the same. He was the same kind of coach back then that he is now. He's the kind of guy who's a little bit more loose, right? He's not so uptight. He's not so in your face. But he's willing to let the players be players. He's willing to let them kind of make decisions sometimes that they think are best for the team. He understands that the guys on the field experiencing the game and getting their hands dirty are the ones who have the clearest perspective of what's working and what's not working. And it might seem sometimes like maybe that makes him a little bit aloof or like he doesn't really have control of the situation. But when you got guys who are playing in the NFL and they've been playing longer than you've been, a coach at all, sometimes you got to let that experience come out. You got to let those guys do what they do best and just go out and play football.
It's just from him going to, especially during the Chip Kelly era where he got hired and nobody thought anything of him, to being really the first head coach in Philadelphia Eagles history to hold up a Lombardi trophy. None of us saw that coming, so it's great to hear from you and your perspective on him as a coach. Cause I guarantee he's the same way now, and he was back then too. But during your time here, they did have Chip Kelly, and Chip Kelly was a polarizing figure in Philadelphia. The new offense he was bringing in, everybody was in awe of him as soon as he walked in the doors. at Lincoln Financial Field and NovaCare Complex. There has to be what? Can you just like go into detail like the huge differences between him and Doug, because one worked when nobody expected it to, and one didn't when everybody expected it to. So just give your insight on that real quick.
I think you had a couple of different factors there that really played heavily into Doug's success versus Chip's. Part of it's the expectation. There is always some added pressure when you come into a situation. The expectations are super high, and with Chip, I think really what it came down to, the difference between Chip and Doug is trust. I know that a lot of people think that it was Chip's ego, and at one point in time, that was something that I also espoused. Was it seemed like Chip was the kind of guy who thought that all of his ideas were the best ideas, and that nobody else's ideas could hold a candle to it. But I don't really think, looking back at it, that was really his ego. I think it was a trust thing. I think that if you look at the difference between the two of them, you go back to the clip, everybody's favorite Philadelphia Eagles clip of all time now, Philly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nick coming off to the sideline, and Doug's got something in his brain, and biggest game of the season, and what does he do? Nick comes over and gives him a suggestion. Hey, do you want to run this play that it has probably, I think we all know now, never worked in practice once.
Right.
They've been practicing it for 2 weeks or whatever. And what does Doug do? Yeah, sure. Why the hell not? Let's do it. It sounds like a great idea. Whereas with Chip, I mean, he didn't even trust his own players to hydrate properly. I don't know if everybody outside of the complex knows about the whole pee testing thing, but I mean, Chip was the micromanager of micromanagers, down to having every single player on the roster take hydration, like urine hydration tests, every single morning.
Oh, every single morning. So
every single morning.
Okay, so there is report. I've heard that he did do that. I did not hear every single morning. I did not hear it to be that extent. That's pretty damning. I mean, that goes into his ego a little bit. You would think if he can't even trust his own players to stay hydrated properly, how can you run an organization?
Well, that's kind of what I mean. Is I don't know that don't get me wrong. He's not in there personally, pee testing. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear and say piss or whatever on a podcast, but I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if he's in there. It's Philadelphia. People aren't going to give a shit. I don't. He's not in there piss testing players every morning himself. But when I talk about ego versus trust, I spent 2 months in Tampa, my second year in the league.
Mm-hmm.
With Greg Schiano, who was by far the worst coach that I have ever worked under in my tenure. He had an ego problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chip didn't necessarily, it wasn't so much about his ego. It wasn't that he thought so much more highly of himself. He was so obsessed with the idea of getting the absolute best out of every single player that the pee testing thing is one thing, right? This is a microcosm for the Chip Kelly era in Philadelphia. The fact that you had guys who were, 5-10-year NFL vets, Jason Peters and Evan and all these different guys, and LaShawn and Brent Selleck and Todd Harriman. You had these dudes who had been playing in the NFL longer than Chip had been a head coach, not just in the NFL, but even at the college level.
Mm-hmm.
And to not trust those guys to take care of their bodies in a way that they could go out and play at the highest level, that started, I think, to erode kind of the feeling that the players had, that they had any autonomy. And when you're dealing with, these aren't college kids, right? These aren't student athletes. These are professionals. And these are grown ass men. And when you start trying to make grown men feel like they don't have autonomy over their own bodies, like they don't know how to take care of themselves, they feel like they're being treated like children. And that was not going to fly on any NFL roster, much less one as as temperamental and fiery as the Eagles.
So that's wild to me, because the thing with Chip that it looked like from the outside looking in, especially when he got in control of the personnel, was he always valued quantity over quality. He thought that he can get the most out of each player. Like you said earlier, when he got rid of Deshaun Jackson, complete shock in Philadelphia. I know that they were talking about trading him, but he just flat out released him. I know the gang tie rumors and all that stuff. I'm not going to get into that because I think it's complete BS. But when you in that locker room, did you feel a power shift? Did you feel like, okay, this is Chip's team, like we have to comply and hope that he has a vision with this?
Absolutely not. And I think that's the big difference between college football and the NFL. You had a couple of different things. There were some schematic things that the Chip's offense did differently in the NFL than they did in college, right? And then in the college world, he could yell at the refs and they would move faster, right? They would set the ball faster. He could get more plays in. In the NFL, if the refs weren't moving as fast as he wanted and he started hollering at them, they just stand over the ball and wait until he got done. Like he couldn't exercise the same amount of control over the tempo of the game in the NFL that he could in the college world. Very, very similar to, in the college world, if you have if your coach tells you to do something, you do it, right? You're a person, you're learning the game. Even the guys who are fifth-year seniors or who are starters and All-Americans, the best guys do what the coach asks them to do at all times. I always remember there were a lot of different moments in probably the second year, Chip's second year more than anything, when you could feel him losing control of the team. The first time I really wasn't sure that this was going to work out, that the Chip Kelly experiment was going to work, was actually like the second or third workout that we had.
Wow.
A strength and conditioning staff from Nebraska. Great dudes. Don't get me wrong. Great guys, knew what they were doing, super smart. The sports science that he brought into that Philadelphia locker room and some of the things that he brought in offensively and in terms of optimizing player performance were copied and are still used in the NFL to this day. There were some very revolutionary things that he did. But it was like the second or third workout they were putting us through, and it was a college workout, right? It was you're 18 years old, you've got fresh legs, you've never, you haven't taken 1,000 hits, like we expect you to be able to grind this shit, yourself into the dust sort of workout. And probably halfway through it, Jason Kelce just had a fucking meltdown. Middle of the workout. So we're in the bubble, and the indoor facility, and he just starts yelling at the strength staff about how we're not college freshmen, how this is kiddie bullshit. Can't believe you're treating us like this. This is ridiculous. I'm not going to stand here and be treated like I'm some goddamn college freshman who doesn't know what he's supposed to do, and storms out of the place. And it was just, and everyone just kind of stopped, and that was the end of the workout. And it was like, we're not college guys. Like, he's not wrong, right? You're talking to one of the best centers in the NFL, one of the most athletic dudes, one of the hardest workers I have ever met in my entire life. And for him to have that kind of a meltdown, you just kind of felt like, not so sure that that's the formula that's going to work for everyone. And over the course of time, it showed that.
Oh, did I lose you?
No. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
There we go. Yeah, that was one of those moments where you just kind of feel like, I don't know if the experiment's really working. It was very early on. Now things got better after that for a little bit, but sooner or later that sort of thing starts to creep in again and again and again. And, the Deshaun stuff with, that would happen in the practice facility, the feelings of players, when the day before the game, like the Chip Kelly model included a soft workout. What you would normally do the day before the game, you would do 2 days before. And then the day before the game, we would go out and we didn't put pads on or anything, but we would run like 40 or 50 plays on air. And to put that kind of stress on dudes' legs, not young kids, but men, in some cases, old men. In the case, like in terms of NFL years, to run, I don't know, 200 plus plays in practice throughout the week, and then come out the day before a game and run 40 plays full speed on air just would burn guys out. And, dudes would complain about it. Dudes would talk about how, by the second half of a game, they felt like they had already played 3 games that week because we'd run that number of plays. But it was more about quantity than quality when it came to Chip.
So, just because you were in the locker room when this all went down, I just want to hit on this real quick and see if you have any thoughts on this. Was there any animosity that you ever sensed or saw between LaShawn McCoy and Chip Kelly?
Oh, between Shady and Chip? I don't think I saw anything. I think it was all done behind closed doors.
Right. It did sound like more media-driven to make sense of like why Chip Kelly randomly decided to trade the best running back in franchise history out of nowhere, because none of us saw that coming one either. Just so many rumors that came out of that era. But to move on to another subject I want to hit on with you, because you did probably have a ton of experience with him during his rookie year and working with him in practice. What was it like to see Nick Foles win a Super Bowl? Were you surprised? Because, you've been around him in the huddle a lot. You have a lot of experience with him. Was that the type of quarterback that you thought from when you first saw him, thinking like, hey, this guy could be a Super Bowl winning quarterback someday?
Yeah, Nick's the greatest. I love that dude to death. He's exactly the same way, no matter what time of day you catch him or where he is.
Mm-hmm.
I had played against Nick, once or twice in college, and then of course in Philadelphia he started out as the backup quarterback when I was the backup center. So we spent a lot of time with his hand on my balls under center, and so you got to we were locker neighbors. I got to know the guy really well, and he's the most legitimate dude in terms of his character and his work ethic and the way that he approaches life and football. What you see is what you get all the time. And so I don't know that I ever expected him to be a, Super Bowl MVP, quarterback, especially in the day and age when the pocket quarterback is kind of, starting to fall to the wayside. You almost have to have a mobile presence under center to run most of the offenses that exist nowadays. But he's an old school pocket passing kind of quarterback, and to see him win a Super Bowl, it may have been unexpected, but man, was it satisfying, because he's the kind of guy that you want to win a Super Bowl. Like him and John Dorenbos are like those types of people where you go, man, I just want the best stuff in life for these guys. So for him to get it, that's spectacular.
I mean, and you would know really personally well how the grind from where Doug and him both started from, since Doug was the quarterback coach and Foles was a rookie and you're the backup center, dealing with those guys hands-on most of the time, like you just said. So, I mean, from an outside perspective sitting in, from you watching that Super Bowl, you're probably like, these are my guys.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you feel a connection to that. Like when, you see Nick Foles hold up a trophy and you go, man, those hands have been on my taint so freaking much. Like it almost feels like I'm holding the Super Bowl trophy. But just, one thing that stays is your connection to those guys. We may not talk, so much anymore. We may not have a whole lot of contact. But when you spend that kind of time in those stressful days and weeks and months and go through camp and go through seasons and go through workouts with those dudes, you feel a connection to them and their success. It's great to see people like that win. You want to see those guys win.
Absolutely. And Andy Reid, too, the head coach that drafted you, just won the Super Bowl last season. That felt great for you, too. It felt great for the city of Philadelphia. Big Reid finally got one.
That was great for him. I mean, he's a very similar dude, right? There's no hiding who Andy Reid is. He is the same guy that you see on the sidelines, the same guy that you see in like behind the scenes footage and stuff like that. Like it's just Andy. He's he probably went home after that Super Bowl and had himself a cheeseburger, and that's what he is. He's a simple guy with an incredibly complex football mind. But the kind of person that he is, not necessarily the kind of, you step away from football and just see the person that he is. And he's a spectacular individual. And you kind of feel good. I'm sure the whole city of Philadelphia was rooting for him in that Super Bowl. Like, yeah, sure. he ain't in Philly anymore, but man, he gave Philly some great years.
Oh no, yeah, we're super appreciative of Andy Reid here, and he gave him Doug Pederson. If it's not for Andy Reid, there's no Doug Pederson. So.
That's true. He did give you that too.
But a lot of people don't really know they know him from a fan perspective through the press conferences. When Howie Roseman lost his job and got really tarnished to the end of the building, and Chip Kelly had full control. I can't imagine going into a building where you know your two head bosses are on different paths. I can't even imagine how that is. But just from a player's perspective, what is your view on Howie Roseman? How did you get a feel for him, playing for him, and what was going through your head during that time when the power struggle was pretty going on in the 2015 offseason?
Well, for me, I like Howie. I like everybody who was a part of the team that drafted me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I would too, yeah.
Those are the first
phone calls. That's your first phone call.
Those are the first guys you talk to. Those are the first guys that you feel like really believe in you and are willing to give you a shot at that level. So, I'll never have anything but love for that entire staff and the guys that are there. All the way from Howie up to Howard Mudd and back to Andy and all the way around that staff. And so for me, when you do, we're aware of the power struggle, right? That's the first thing. The players are, we're not stupid. A lot of players are a part of the fabric of the NFL. Understand how it works, the internal politics, the money, the external politics, like the different power struggles and things that happen in the organization. So we're very much aware of it while it's happening. For me, I was never in a position where I had any influence or anyone really gave a crap about my opinion of it. My best bet was always to do what I did best, which was to put my head down, shut my mouth, and just work harder. So that was the only thing that I really thought about during that time was I'm not picking sides. I'm not getting involved. I am going to shut up and work and hope that at the end of it, I've still got a job, that somebody still likes me enough to keep me around. Because until you make big money, until you're that established starter, the littlest thing gets you, kicks you out of that building. So I was not willing to make those mistakes.
Right, but now you can look back on it now and be like, that was some crazy epic shit right there.
Oh, it was nutso. Yeah, to witness it from the inside was bananas. But that's just because, you would get both sides of it. You would see what was happening inside. You'd feel the tension in the locker room and in the hallways and stuff. You'd kind of hear the guys that were a little bit more well connected and knew the front office people a little bit better, and the higher ups. You'd hear them talking about what was going to happen, this person, that person, and who was going to go where and who was going to do what. But then you'd leave the building and you'd get the media perspective and the fan perspective, which was every bit as insane as what was actually going on inside. So it was two different perspectives, but an equal amount of insanity.
Right, it felt like insanity. I can remember that stuff like it was yesterday. And then you had, just to wrap it up real quick, and then we'll move on. You have a running back that comes into the team who very well known from Dallas, stealing from your rival. And it just seemed like it went to shit the minute he went into training camp and wasn't practicing, and Malcolm Jenkins gets in that chair to sit down. Like, could you believe that too? Like, here's a free agent we just brought in. He wanted to come here. He got paid the big bucks. And then he that's the performance he gives us. That's what he shows us. He gets this much, falls out of with our head coach this quickly, and doesn't really try that much anymore. His effort's incredibly questionable. Like, for a player that's a backup like you, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, seeing a guy who was a starter who the team coveted a lot and paid him a ton of money, and for him to just not care and just lay down like that would infuriate me.
Well, the NFL is a weird place. The longer you get, or the longer you spend in it, the weirder it gets, I think. Mm-hmm. It's a place where you've got a mix of dudes who are borderline superheroes, right? Who run faster, jump higher, hit harder, throw farther, etc. than anyone else on the planet. Elite, top-level athletes, the best in the world, smoking each other every day in full pads. You get those people, and then you also get dudes who you would think have no business being playing at the highest level in sports. Maybe they're not athletically as gifted. Maybe they don't, you would think they're, as dumb as a box of rocks, but they've ingratiated themselves with a coach or with a staff, or there's something about them that keeps them, around these teams. And there's everything in between that. So when you have guys who are extremely physically gifted and starters and getting paid all this money, and you don't know why, when there are people who are not as athletically talented, but who work hard and who are just genuinely good people, and some of them make it 6 months, some of them make it 5 years, but everywhere in between, it's like, it is infuriating to have guys who have so much potential seemingly not live up to it, when there are people who would give anything just to pad up for a Sunday, and guys who are scraping by on every fiber of their being, just to hang out in the locker room, basically. Like those two things create an intense dichotomy that really puts, when you're in the middle of all of that, you feel bad for one side, you're jealous of the other, but at the same time, all you can really worry about at the end of the day is yourself. Because if that's one thing that the NFL is, one reason why I don't miss it is because it is very individualistic like that. You got guys who form their cliques. Some people, some cliques are bigger, some are smaller, but it's hard to form friendships. It's hard to form relationships because everyone can be gone in the blink of an eye. And if you don't worry about yourself, you will be next, especially if you are not as physically gifted. I'm just a fat nerd from Iowa, man. I don't know how I worked my way into that position, but to make it to the point that my body literally gave out, just trying to hang with some of those guys. I feel that frustration when there's to see people of immense talent not put that talent to its maximum potential.
I hear you. I mean, that's the truth. That's just that's just your answer right there, and God-given right to feel that way. And that's the best approach you can definitely have as a professional athlete. So I agree with you completely. It's just, from a fan perspective, it's crazy because you had a player on the team that is going to your owner crying, complaining about the role in the team when he wasn't even playing that well to begin with. It was just a clusterfuck, man. What the shit? I mean, Deshaun Jackson randomly cut. Everyone's like, okay. I mean, in Chip we trust. LaShawn traded for Kiko Alonso, who, okay, Chip we trust, I guess. And then, boom, the whole stuff just blows. I mean, trades for Sam Bradford was okay for, I mean, he had a decent year, I guess. It wasn't the best, but it just so much in that time, in that little time frame. So much happened to the point where the Eagles are Super Bowl champions now. You can make a 30 for 30 about it.
Somebody probably will at some point in time. The Andy Reid to Chip Kelly to Doug Pederson, like the connection, the disconnect, and then the prodigal son in Doug coming back to the city of brotherly love to win the Super Bowl that Andy never could. Like that, in and of itself, is a tremendous storyline. It really is. It's like WWE stuff.
Incredible. But so I'm glad you brought up Howard Budd, because I was going to mention him as well in this, because Howard Budd was he's such a polarizing figure as an offensive line coach. Usually when you bring up offensive line coaches, you hear Bill Callahan and then you hear Howard Budd. His name is always in that. So you went from him as a great, well-known coach to Jeff Stoutland, nobody knew at the time, and now is a huge popular figure in Philadelphia for one of the best offensive line coaches in the league, in my opinion. What was it like to have those two as coaches? Because, I mean, completely, I would, from my fan perspective, looking from the outside looking in, they seem like two incredibly different personalities.
Oh, they are. No, they're about as opposite as you can get. And I came from Iowa, which is a Joe Moore zone scheme, flat setting system, or at least was more so at the time. Now that we have Tim Pulaski there, things are kind of changing a little bit. But for the most part, like that was the origin that I came from. So to go from that to Howard Mudd, who like if Joe Moore is the this is going to be a really weird analogy, so hang with me here, all right?
Oh, I got you.
If Joe Moore is the Bob Ross of offensive line, then Howard Mudd is his doppelganger. He's like the opposite of that. Like, Joe Moore, very well known, everybody knows. He's got an award named after him now in college football, #1 offensive line in the country, gets the Joe Moore Award. On the other hand, Howard Mudd, who knew Joe, right, but did not believe in that system at all. Like, Hall of Fame offensive line coach, but does it a completely different way. For me to switch systems, to switch styles, was very different. And then you get Jeff Stalin, who is a little bit more Joe Moore. I think he's a little bit more of a power guy, but he's got a very different style in terms of his coaching, in terms of his set mechanics. For me, when it comes to offensive line, it always comes back down to the technique and the mechanics, because those were the things that I had to obsess about to be successful. Being a smaller guy, I had to do all of the technical stuff right. So for me, when I think of the two of them, I am always drawn back to the differences in their philosophies as coaches, less so than their differences, or more so than their differences as people. Don't get me wrong, very different people, but at the same time, offensive line coaches tend to kind of fall into a type, if you will, to deal with offensive linemen, to have that 5 moving as one mentality, that that up first on the practice field, last off the practice field. Like, successful offensive line coaches all have kind of a similar philosophy in that regard, but the technique differences between them were astounding. And Stout came from Alabama, won a couple of national championships, so we knew he was going to be great. Howard Mudd, I knew nothing about the guy. I knew that he was a Hall of Fame coach and that we paid him a ton of money to come out of retirement to play for Philadelphia. Liked him, he liked me, and that was good for me. But at the same time, I think that if I had to pick one of them, to emulate moving forward, I would pick Stout. I think his system just works better. And I'm in agreement with you in terms of his his level of success and what he's doing in the NFL. I'd say he's probably in the top echelon of offensive line coaches. He'll probably spend the rest of his career, coaching offensive lines in the NFL, hopefully in Philadelphia, because he's really, really good at it.
He is absolutely great. And I like to hit on that because you are a smaller center. So is Jason Kelce. So really, he went through the same practice regimen you had to get to, at least in this terms of mindset, to become what he is now. I think it's just incredible because, again, he was a 6th-round guy. I think nobody expected Jason Kelce to become the player he is today, especially for the size that he is. I think the reason why he won the 6th round is because of his size. What about him? Does it really did that surprise you at all that he became such a great player right off the gap, really, for the Eagles?
I think that for Kelce, what differentiates him is his intensity. Intensity and his intelligence. He's a smaller center. True, your center's usually the smallest offensive lineman on the field, and I think that for him, part of his drop was, I forget if he got mono where he had a hernia or something his senior year in college that really hurt his draft stock. But he's one of the most intense individuals on and off the field that you'll ever meet. We went to live concerts together, and he was the dude, who'd shove his way into the middle of a crowd and just be, rave dancing in the, with glow sticks and stuff, just going absolutely bananas. And then you get him on the practice field. He's the same kind of guy. He's out there hooting and hollering, hyping everybody up and yelling all the time. And, you go into the workout and he's, screaming while he's moving crazy amounts of weight, and stays amped all the time. But at the same time, his football brain is incredible. I mean, I remember at one point in time, he knew Chip's offense better, I think, than Chip did. I think that he, at one point in time, had such a firm understanding of Chip Kelly's system that he could have run that offense entirely by himself without any input. And part of that was the way that we were coached, right? Chip's system relies on the center to identify the front, to make the calls as far as identifying the linebackers, to make adjustments if there need to be protection adjustments, sometimes to call audibles if we see things that like the quarterback doesn't. Like, we do all that stuff because we get set first, and Chip is the quarterback to be freed up to make his reads instead of having to think about the defense. So we had to, as centers like me and Kelce and Mulk and the other guys that played center, Josh Andrews, we had to know that offense well enough to, as well as the coaches did. But Kelce knew it better. And just his ability to process information quickly and accurately, it was Rain Man stuff, just the extent of his knowledge and his ability to utilize that knowledge to put us in the best situation for the play that was called. And so I'm sure that in Doug's system, he probably knows that system, as well as Doug, if not better. Like, that's just the kind of dude that he is, the kind of mind that he has for the game.
That's a great perspective on Jason Kelce right there. I love it. Julian, what is the mental hurdle, though, like going through 17 roster transactions with the Eagles, including 7 cuts? I mean, I can only imagine how hard you had to work every time you came back saying, like, I got to make it this opportunity last, got to make this opportunity last. I can only imagine what goes through your mind, especially during this time, in this pandemic, where most of us, including myself, even got laid off for a little bit. Can you just put us through the mind of a fringe NFL player, and how mentally strong do you have to be to go through that and not know, like, if the next day if you're going to have a job or not?
So I've been told by other guys who were in either similar positions or even guys who weren't in a similar position that they were always really shocked by how well I handled that because the back and forth, like, you as a player, you have a certain amount of control. The one thing about the NFL is that when you are on one of those contracts that is, where they essentially can cut you and bring you back whenever they want to, like, you're not really beholden to that team, right? At any point in time, I could have just said, nah, called my agent, been like, listen, I'm done in Philly. Don't think I want to come back here anymore. Let's not accept any more offers to return, and, we'll go find somewhere else to play. Could have done that. Some people will argue, should have done that. But to be completely honest with you, it didn't really faze me all that much. For me, I think that I felt fortunate to have a place to be. I liked Philadelphia. I liked Stout. So I wanted to learn from Stout. I wanted to keep playing for Jeff Stoutland. I knew Chip's system. Wasn't real keen on learning a new system in the middle of the season at that point in time. And I was coming off of a back injury. So I've just felt fortunate to even have a place where they wanted me. And I remember when they brought me back for the first time, not the year that I got cut and released a bunch of times, but after I had the back surgery, and then I came back, and we were perfectly well aware, me, the coaching staff, everybody, perfectly well aware that I was not going to play anymore that season. Mm-hmm. But practice squad eligibility left. I couldn't because I'd been on practice squad, then active, or went from active to practice back to active roster. And I'd played too many games on active roster. I didn't have any practice squad left. So, they didn't really have an obligation to bring me back. They had said that, that was something that they wanted to do, but I know the NFL's a business and that I didn't have to be brought back. That very well could have been the end of it. And when they did bring me back, the first thing that I did was I asked, Stout what it was that about me that made them want to bring me back, and he said that it was, it was the intangible stuff. It was that I had a work ethic, that I was always willing to put in the hard hours and put in the hard work. It was that I was a personality guy. They didn't have to worry about me. There were no character issues. I was the kind of guy who would help anybody who needed to be helped. That I'd drag rookies, along with me and help make them better. That I was a hype guy. That on the practice field, that my positive attitude, and my work ethic and being willing to kind of, be a guy who would dance to the music and sweat, until I passed out were things that they felt like I brought in that were necessary. And so I that was always something that I could just kind of, lean on was, well, I may not be as quick as I used to be, right? I may not be able to squat as much as I used to. But at the very least, I've got a place where they know me, they like me, and I can be a positive influence on the practice field and in the weight room and in the meeting room. And if I can, that was kind of I was perfectly well aware that last season that was going to be it. But I had friends on that team, some of them younger than me. And I thought, if I can, push some of the information that I have, if I can, teach some of these young guys the things that I've learned and help them have longer careers, then I'm going to stick around here as long as I can do that. And so for me, that was my mentality. And like I said, I've been told by lots of guys that they would have just said, fuck this, thrown up the middle fingers, packed up their bags and left. But I felt like I still had something left to give the city of Philadelphia.
Who was making those phone calls the most to you, though? Who was the guy that you had to – I don't know if your agent was the one who told you, but if anybody was calling you, who was the one saying, Julian, or Julian, it's time to come back?
So they would actually kind of tell me before I left. That year, when you are the 53rd man on the roster, you are essentially you're a tool, right? You're a part of the team. And your job on the team is if someone goes down, like if a starter goes down and they've got to bring in a free agent or a backup at a different position, the dude that goes, they bring that guy in. And when the starter's done rehabbing and he can start again, they cut the other guy and they bring you back. So I knew that was kind of my role. It wasn't a surprise. They would let me know, hey, we're going to cut you. So-and-so got hurt. We got to bring in a linebacker. The medical staff says that his rehab's probably going to be about 2 weeks before he can play again. Hang out, go to your apartment, chill for a couple weeks, work out on your own. 2 weeks from now, we'll bring you back. So that was probably 3 or 4 of those transactions. But towards the end, started to get the feel like, all right, this is starting to get a little old. I think they're probably starting to get a little bit sick of it. This is one of these is probably going to be the last one. And I think I knew when they brought in whoever it was, Stout's old center from Alabama. I knew at that point, that this was the end.
All right, Julian. So last thing before I let you go, we really went into detail with Jason, so I think you gave the viewers a good insight on him. Anything about Jason Peters? Because, Jason Peters really wants to play into his 40s right now. He's still working out. He looked good last year. Lane Johnson, any good experience stories you can give the viewers real quick before you leave the show?
Listen, bring Jason Peters back as long as he wants to play. And when
I agree. I agree with you completely.
Board up part of his part of the locker room and make it a temporary office for him for as long as he wants. I'll tell you what, his knowledge, his experience, his willingness to work with young players, regardless of his situation or their situation, the advice that he gives and his ability to bring and to make everyone perform at a higher level around him is invaluable. Even if he can't walk, I'd still keep him on the team just to teach people and give him advice, because he taught me more stuff. I wasn't even at his position, and I learned more about the NFL from him than anybody else or any experience ever taught me. Bring him back as long as he wants to, man.
The only issue people have with that is because I'm sure you're aware, you still follow the team, I'm sure. They drafted Andre Dillard in the first round last year to be their left tackle of the future. You struggled a little bit, but Jason Peters played so well last season. The only thing at this point in his career that would probably be his biggest struggle is the false starts, but I would argue age and trying to be quicker than the guy you're lining up against would probably factor into that a little bit more. But, Peters is a legend in Philadelphia, as you know, and it's great to have an insight on him on how he helps out other players and as a teacher the way that you're describing right now.
Yeah, I think that, first of all, he false starts 2 out of every 3 plays. I'm going to let you know that right now. If you slow down the film,
Mm-hmm.
That's just part of his game. First of all, you're not allowed to do that, to be that big and that quick.
Mm-hmm.
Never seen anybody that size move the way that he moves. It's not fair. I'm super jealous, and I'm kind of angry about it. But at the same time, yeah, that's just that's part of his game. The quick get off, that's part of his game. You got to accept that you're going to get a couple of false starts out of him, but at the end of the day, you are a better team with Jason Peters than without him. That's my opinion.
Absolutely. And then you really were there the first early years of Lane Johnson's career. I would obviously he was the 4th overall draft pick, so that has to be a good player behind that pick coming in. But seeing him grow from when you first saw him to now, what are your thoughts on Lane Johnson?
Lane's great. He's a great dude. He's a good old boy. And I love that he has embraced so much the role that he has. Coming in, not gonna lie, I thought he was just a goofy dude. Man, athletically gifted, no doubt about that. But just kind of a goofy motherfucker, to be honest with you. And him and Al Barbary hit it off, and listening to the two of them go back and forth, and then Matt Tobin getting in the mix, arguing over which one of them was a hillbilly, which one was a redneck, and which one was trailer trash. Like like those three were peas in a pod, and they were some goofy dudes, but some great football players. And I feel like Lane has really embraced the fact that he is a potential future Hall of Famer, that he is a Pro Bowl guy, one of the best offensive linemen in the league, and his stuff, with his offseason training program. I think he does. He's got an O-line specific thing. The O-line masterminds thing that he's been part of and built from the ground up. The character, the Philadelphia character that he's kind of become, like he really has evolved and grown, and I love seeing it.
Do you think, in your opinion, knowing the offensive line positions and studying the game and being a student of the game like you are, do you think Lane Johnson's the best right tackle in the NFL over guys like Mitchell Schwartz?
I'll go on a limb and say yeah. I think that his ceiling, I think is probably the highest of any of the right tackles in the game. And there's definitely a distinct difference between right tackle and left tackle. But when it comes to right tackles, I don't know that you've got a guy with a higher ceiling than Lane.
Former Eagles offensive lineman Julian Vandervelde joined the show. Julian, thanks so much for coming on, giving us some great insight on Chip Kelly, Doug Pederson, and the rest of the offensive line in Philly. We miss you, man. We miss seeing your name across the Eagles tweets, man. I think once this show launches, people are gonna be like, "Oh, there he is. Let's listen to see what you gotta say." It's been a while with Julian, so really great having you on, man. And Philadelphia doesn't forget you.
Hey, I still expect to get a call for me to come back and join the team again any one of these days, just to push one more train.
That's what I was gonna say. Is it time to help out retirement? I mean, Kelce's getting a little older now. There's retirement talks.
That's right. He retires. I'll come back for a day just to shake his hand and hang his jersey up in the halls of the building, and then I'll be back out on the street again.
Awesome. That would be awesome. All right, Julian. Thanks for giving me your time to come onto the show real quick.
Appreciate it, Conor. Have a great time, man. We'll see you.
You too, man.